We are heading for a time when the only permitted protest will be 10 people on College Green outside Parliament, held in silence between the hours of 12 and 2 p.m. Is that where we want to be as a country? Freedom of speech is under attack. In the last couple of decades, we've seen communication transform before our eyes. Not only have we seen the internet grow and flourish, but mobile communication has been revolutionised by smartphones. Along with this newfound connectivity, we've seen massive growth in censorship, cancelling and restriction on our freedom of speech. Only recently, in July 22, police visited a 51-year-old man for the crime of retweeting a post from Lawrence Fox, which someone then reported as causing anxiety. Harry Miller from Fair Cop was present and was then arrested. Lawrence Fox was also present, filmed the event, but wasn't harassed for posting his initial tweet. The behaviour of Hampshire police makes no sense. We all have a right to freedom of speech, at least we think we do. We are, however, facing increasing restrictions on those freedoms. In recent years, we've seen the President of the United States banned from Twitter. Whether or not you agree with Donald Trump, his policies, what he stands for, is not important. The fact that he is the sitting president of the most powerful country on earth can be effectively silenced on social media should cause you alarm. If they can silence him at the press of a button, what chance do the rest of us stand? Currently, Putin, as well as Taliban leaders, are all active on Twitter, just to put it in context. There are some very powerful people in control of some of the largest communications tools. And any one of us can be cancelled at any time if what we say doesn't correspond with their narrative. I find that quite concerning. I'm not advocating being free to abuse, defame, insult, far from it. I'm not trying to protect the trolls so they can pile on to whoever they disagree with. I'm talking about not being able to question the science. Science is not absolute, never has been, never will be. Only 90 years ago, on April the 13th, 1932, in fact, science was settled that the atom was the smallest thing on Earth. This was a scientific absolute, an unquestionable fact. All scientists were in agreement, all except for two. The following day, on April the 14th, Cockcroft and Walton split the atom and a whole mess of crap fell out, changing that settled scientific fact forever. The minority of scientists proved the vast majority wrong. They questioned the science and discovered that it was incorrect, despite the vast majority of scientists strongly disagreeing with them. My point is, science changes, and the very act of using the phrase "we are following the science" is in itself meaningless. What the UK government meant by that statement was, we have selected some scientists that agree with what we want them to agree with, and we will be using them as the absolute arbiter of fact. At this point, anyone who questioned the science was labelled an anti-vaxxer. This label was used to divide anyone who wasn't a true believer from those that were. The term was used to silence opposition, stifle debate, and stop the conversation. There is a very valid reason why most new medications take decades to come to market. It is because you can't shorthand 5 or 10 years of long-term data. No matter how you safety test a product, you can't replicate the passing of time. There is no way of knowing what a medication is going to do to a patient until 5 years has passed, and even then, you don't know what it will do to them after 10 years. Having said that, I totally understand the need for a vaccine as fast as we could produce it, in order to protect the very vulnerable. If you had one or more pre-existing comorbidities and were over 75 years old, it would probably have been in your best interest to take the jab as soon as you could. The possible effects of a jab on you in 5 or 10 years are of much less relevance. My issue came when the age range started dropping. We should be able to speak freely. While writing this, I'm spending as much effort wondering how it might be interpreted the wrong way as I am on the actual content. We all have different opinions. We used to be able to do that without name-calling, without sinking to calling each other Nazis or fascists. When did we sink so low? Maybe half the problem is that people feel less inhibited to vent their true feelings online in the safety of their home. Having said that, they say it in Parliament as well. If you aren't a believer of the follow the science narrative, you will, I suspect, have seen a misinformation warning online, the modern day equivalent of censorship, to make you question the integrity of a post or piece online. Much of the content, originally labelled as misinformation by Twitter and Facebook, has since been confirmed to be anything but misinformation. When Robert Malone, the inventor of the mRNA vaccine technology, is labelled as such for disagreeing with the governments around the world, it should at least wave a red flag that something is up. If you think about it, what is Robert Malone gaining from telling the world that his invention is being misused? He isn't making money out of going public with his views. If anything, quite the opposite. I doubt he's earned very much since. Then, compare that with those accusing him of misinformation. They're the ones making vast sums. I'm inclined to follow the money to help me determine who's telling the truth. Disagreeing with the government has become misinformation. In an age when politicians have never been held in lower esteem, attempting to force their narrative using such crude devices is clumsy, to say the least. Having said that, there still seem to be plenty of people about prepared to unquestioningly believe whatever the government tell them. My point is that it's difficult to know what is an actual true fact, what is what your government wants you to believe, and what is completely made up. Even the supposed fact checkers are open to question. What qualifies a fact checker as an undisputed arbiter of truth? Who are the definitive judge and jury of unequivocal fact? I believe that social media channels employ their own fact checkers. Somewhere in among all the crazy name-calling, the pile-ons and the abuse, we need to find a way forwards. A way whereby we can protect people from online abuse while also protecting freedom of speech. Any censorship, by definition, becomes a limitation on free speech. Understanding the online world is taking some time for all of us. Blocking someone on social media is no different to walking away from them in the street if you no longer wish to speak to them. People need to understand they can control much of their interaction online. If somebody doesn't want to listen to you, they don't have to follow you. They can block you. No one should be able to spread hate, racism, etc. But we've reached a point in time where triple vaxxers are turning on double vaxxers, all because the government is following the science. While I often disagree with the opinions of others online, I would still defend their right to voice them. The issue, I believe, is that nudge theory, the government's favourite propaganda tool, relies on a level of compliance. Nudge theory used to work more effectively before the internet, before smartphones. Nudge theory uses emotional tools such as guilt to steer group behaviour. We saw it in action with face masks during the pandemic. A government used to transmit its message across traditional media, knowing that it was the only information source available. Apart from a few people in pubs disagreeing with the messaging, no one could really question the narrative. Today, however, we can not only see other people's questioning the message, but we can connect with them. We realise we are not alone in our thoughts. The internet has been an eye-opener for millions. The internet has also highlighted just how much censorship we face. We couldn't really see it before, but it's quite easy to spot now. Now we can see on social media all the events that the mainstream media choose to ignore. Additionally, the government's Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Bill, Part 3, is threatening to restrict our right to peaceful protest, another form of freedom of speech. This government, and others around the world, their solution to being questioned and disagreed with is to change the law to make disagreement harder. That isn't freedom in any sense of the word. Our government isn't interested in protecting our freedoms. If you care about freedom of speech, then you need to vote for a party that will stand up for and defend your rights. Vote Reform at the next general election.